Lots of Tesla stock news today. Let's go through everything. Estimated delivery wait times in China for Tesla's Model Y long range, not the Model 3, but Model Y, have increased to 6 to 8 weeks, up from 2 to 6 weeks. We haven't had this happen in a while, and this should be positive for Tesla stock. Unless Tesla does something like cut prices again. But in all seriousness, this is fantastic news for Tesla shareholders. There are a few reasons why this is happening. First of all, the Model Y is only $500 more expensive than the refresh Model 3 in China. So unless you really need ventilated seats and you really need a screen in the back for the kids, you probably want to go with the Model Y. Unless you are also very picky about the suspension, then go with the Model 3 instead. That one is going to have a significantly better suspension and a much quieter interior as well. Also, the refresh Model 3 is not going to be delivered to anyone in China until Q4. So if you want a Tesla right now, you can really only go with the Model Y unless you're okay with the Model S or X in China, which are a lot more expensive. So most people will say nah to those two. And all of the legacy Model 3s are completely sold out. Now, Ray also mentioned tax exemptions, which should remain until the end of the year, and no one supposedly knows if this policy will be amended in 2024. But my understanding is that the tax exemption is going to be in place for definitely a little while longer at least. If we go back to much longer wait times again, I would expect Tesla to increase Model Y prices, and as a result, I think the stock would soar. If you thought that was it for today's good Tesla stock news, think again, because we just got Tesla wholesale numbers from China, which combine local sales and exports, and it is an impressive 84,000. We would need to compare this number to May, which was the second month in the previous quarter, and right now we are in the second month of the previous quarter with this number here, and it is significantly higher, as you can see. Well done, Tesla team, well done. The reason why this is so impressive is because Tesla just switched to the refresh Model 3 production in Shanghai, and yet the wholesale number is pretty good. It's actually really good. This gives us hope that this ramp of this refresh Model 3 is going to be quite a bit faster than, for example, the ramp of the refresh Model S and X, which took forever. Tesla is trying to clear out the inventory of the old Model 3. In the UK, you can actually get 0% financing right now, which makes it a great deal. A whole bunch of refresh Model 3s were just spotted in China. Most likely, these are being transported to Tesla stores where they will be put on display as demo vehicles for people to check them out before they put an order. It appears that the manual gear selector in the Model 3s is located near the sun visors in the ceiling right here. But of course, typically you would just shift on the screen. And you would only use that if the screen somehow does not work at all. Yesterday, I talked about how the refresh Model Y is going to be released next year, probably in October, at least based on that credible rumor that predicted the Model 3 refresh extremely accurately, and this is probably how it would look. I think it looks beautiful here. Tesla China president just said, we expect to start building the Megafactory for energy storage products in the near future, and the products will be mainly used for export. I just talked about that earlier, and yeah, this will be for exporting. Seems like probably some of these will be shipped even to Europe. What a save from Autopilot. Bam! I mean, there's no bam, that's the whole point. That's pretty incredible. The Giga train in Giga Berlin is now officially here. As many as 400 people will be able to take a ride all at once. This will help Tesla hire more people in Giga Berlin easier, which is incredibly important because Tesla recently has been having a harder time hiring people in Giga Berlin. This will really help with that. And the train will travel 60 times per day from Monday to Friday. There's a heated discussion going about this chart on X. This shows how Tesla cut prices of the Model S and X by about 30%. This billionaire says, I was shocked when I saw this chart. The speed and aggressiveness with which Tesla is cutting prices is the way to beat the end boss. Rapidly increasing price affordability multiplied by constantly improving hardware and software, well, that will equal super maximized market demand. This is a lethal combination which we haven't seen play out in any modern market before. Some companies cut prices, but most keep prices flat or increase them. Some companies improve products quickly, but no one has actually given you more for less on such a big ticket purchase so frequently. But the Tesla economist has some harsh words about this. Tesla makes about 1,000 Model S's and X's per week. This is hardly the make or break of anything, and still producing 30% less than pre-planned models. S and X has nothing to do with Tesla's future. Get a grip. In the last quarter, though, Tesla produced roughly 1,500 Model S's and X's per week. However, the Tesla economist is right about Tesla not making as many Model S's and X's as Tesla did before. Sawyer says here that the Tesla Cybertruck was just spotted for the first time with its air suspension pumped up. What do you think? That looks pretty high. If you remember, back in February we saw this picture, but this was still more of a prototype. So it's reassuring to see these pictures now. President of Tesla China said in an interview that the localization rate of the supply chain in the Shanghai factory is more than 95%. There are about 360 local tier 1 suppliers under contract, and we have introduced about 60 of them to the international market, which will be useful for Giga Mexico, I think. We haven't heard anything about the Tesla van as of late. Alex says the US commercial van sales are 375,000 a year, and that Tesla van could be coming in 2024. James says this would be huge, especially if it's built on the Cybertruck platform. Maybe it indeed could come that soon, because Tesla would not just need to rebuild everything from scratch. James continues, it's not a complete pipe dream either, because it leaked in a supplier catalog a while back, a catalog which has been decently accurate. Here's something to think about. The question not enough people are asking is, will the Model 3 production increase now? Well, likely somewhat, but probably not as much if they had gone with castings. Why would they not use castings? One reason why Tesla would not use the Giga castings on the refresh Model 3 is to minimize the downtime, perhaps. But also on Monroe Live YouTube channel, I heard that they said the castings actually make the car a little bit heavier in total. It makes it much easier to mass produce it, but it does come with a penalty of heavier weight and perhaps even higher cost, temporarily at least. Also, it's not officially confirmed that there are no Giga castings used in the refresh Model 3 yet, so I wouldn't come to any conclusions as of now, but I think it is probably worth pointing out that if Tesla did use Giga castings, we would have known by now, most likely. And if Tesla used a structural battery pack, we would have probably also known about that, but we haven't heard anything about that. Interestingly also, Austin, Giga Texas is going to be closed for the next 3 weeks starting tomorrow, which should be today. Another possible reasoning is that the company that Tesla uses that makes these Giga presses, perhaps they just couldn't make them in time. And maybe, therefore, Tesla decided to go without them. Homer just said, this is another day of FSD doing all my driving while morons continue to insist it's not real. Harsh words, but he does have a point. 18 miles driven in total, it appears, and almost every single one of them was on FSD. Mercedes just released this new concept car, and Electric says Mercedes-Benz CLA concept is the long-range entry-level EV we have been waiting for. Supposedly, this car will have 466 miles of WLTP range, which would be more than the range of the new and refreshed Model 3, which should be at 421 miles WLTP. Supposedly, Mercedes made this vehicle super efficient, and you can drive 5.2 miles with just 1 kilowatt hour. CarWow just tested the new refreshed Model 3, and he said that he got 4.57 miles per kilowatt hour, but that's just driving normally. And yeah, I don't think anyone is actually going to end up getting 5.2 miles driving this Mercedes. This Mercedes will allow you to charge it at much faster speeds, allowing you 250 kilowatt DC fast charging. I think the car looks pretty good here. And if Mercedes really delivers on every single little thing, I really don't think it will cost anywhere close to what Tesla will be able to sell its Model 3s. If that car worries you as a Tesla stock investor, I would like to remind you and everyone else that, for example, the BMW i4 supposedly was to arrive in 2020 with 435 miles of range. And surprisingly, they actually delivered that pretty much, but in kilometers. The actual range did not turn out impressive at all. So it makes for good headlines, but in reality, that car is not going to be nowhere near as good as Mercedes claims it will be. And if it does turn out to be pretty good, it will be wildly expensive. I think there's a point to be made here. Tesla is a story stock, but the bears don't realize that Elon can keep pushing the story until someone else makes a better EV at lower cost and higher production, or someone else solves a scalable FSD solution. In both of these, Tesla is a clear leader, unless you consider LiDAR to be scalable. But we saw from Bosch recently that, yeah, LiDAR is not exactly going great. I mean, Bosch discontinued basically production of LiDAR sensors. So that was news that a lot of bears will completely ignore. Until then, in the long run, the stock will likely continue to rise, whilst Tesla CVs will continue to improve, and the neural net will receive more training, moving the goalpost. And there's no one close to Tesla in those two areas, like I said earlier. Tesla profit margins have been challenged in the first half of 2023 back to 2021 levels, still trading favorably over a longer time horizon. I expect this number to start improving as early as Q4 of this year, as bigger bottom line contributions from energy start to offset weaker auto margin more significantly. And this would track with Musk's rough timeline comment: tough 2023, better in 2024, probably. With Tesla cutting prices further, Yashu actually makes a pretty good point here. One massively underrated part of these Tesla price cuts would be the cuts essentially forced the hand of all municipalities and governmental bodies that are still transitioning their gas fleets to EVs to exclusively buy Teslas now. How can you justify blatantly wasting taxpayer money to buy a more expensive Ford or GM EV just because you hate Elon's politics? You can't, because money talks. And this demand lever is to the tune of millions of cars worldwide. My initial thought about that was, how many police departments are buying Model S's or X's? Certainly not X's, right? But turns out it actually happened before. And my second thought was, well, the governments have always found ways to waste a crazy amount of money, so it wouldn't really be a huge surprise if they continue to waste a lot of money. But if Teslas are just so much cheaper than other vehicles, you sort of have to really consider buying Teslas now, and many municipalities, like Yashu said here, will end up buying Teslas. I'm not sure they will buy Model S's and X's, but Model 3s and Ys, oh yeah. And I do expect more price cuts in the future for Model Ys and Model 3s. It does not mean that these price cuts for Model 3s and Ys will absolutely, definitely, for sure, 100% will happen, but if they don't happen, then Tesla will seriously exceed my expectations. And I'm already all in Tesla stock with my stock portfolio. The Mercedes CEO just made a comment which should make Mercedes look better, but actually just did the opposite. It makes Tesla look quite a bit better. It's not a question of whether electric or internal combustion engine is going to win. Basically, automotive engineering is a decathlon, and the Germans continue to lead in most disciplines. Like, German automakers are leading with costs, software, battery technology, or autonomous driving. I mean, Tesla has a huge factory in Germany, so if you include Tesla, yeah, sure. You can say the Germans are doing pretty well, but you exclude Tesla and him saying it's a decathlon, meaning you have to be very good at many different things, actually makes Mercedes look pretty bad and Tesla really good. The only place where Tesla, I would say, is lacking a little bit is in the areas of luxury, but more in the traditional sense. Tesla makes up for that with the best technology, the fastest cars, and cars that have the best electric ranges. Gary makes a few interesting points here. I spoke with a senior journalist yesterday who covers autos at one of the top business magazines, who's writing a story about Tesla. After about an hour of questions and answers, he asked if I had questions for him. Even though I already knew the answer, I asked if a company's ad spending ever influences how he or other journalists report on Tesla. As I expected, he said in 20 years, no editor or salesperson had ever asked him to write a positive story about an OEM who advertised in their publications, or a negative story about one who didn't. He was adamant no journalist worth her salt would allow sales to determine what he or she as a journalist writes. This is a similar refrain I've heard from other senior journalists. There has been and remains a huge Chinese wall between the journalistic side and sales side of mainstream media platforms. Without it, the editorial side would have no credibility. That is not true of trade publications, for example, automotive news. The folklore among Tesla Uber bros is that advertising dollars drive whether the media is positive or negative toward a company. In fact, journalists are trying to write differentiated stories that are timely and which impart insight or wisdom or something that stands apart from the pablum that passes as news these days. He acknowledged stories get judged on number of clicks and number of views, and admitted that negative stories tend to get greater readership. He attributed the high percentage of negative stories about Tesla to the reality that Tesla is no longer the underdog taking on the Goliath. Tesla is the Goliath. In other words, Tesla was always the Goliath, so that's why the stories have always been negative. That makes sense. Perfect sense, of course. Not having a PR department hurts Tesla, since no one at Tesla is working actively to get positive stories into the media or refute negative stories about Tesla that always come up. Now, I respect Gary, but here I have to say, if you ask a journalist, how is your integrity? Is your integrity high? Have you been asked to do certain things? I mean, why would they ever admit and say, yeah, I have been asked to do this or that? Why would they say that? If they said that, they would be tarnishing their reputation. It's in their very best interest to not admit that. It would be like asking a politician. Think about a politician that you don't like. And then think about you asking that politician, are you honest? Do you think that politician will say, yes, I am not honest? I don't see much of a difference here. So I would have to agree with Alexandra about this point, even if, and that's a huge if, she says, the journalist was neutral. I have it from good source that the editor decides on the headlines and whether it gets published at all. That's the important part. Where and what length. This is the same Chinese wall that we have in banks and rating agencies. I call it BS. Ian Omar here goes a step further and says that's like asking a politician whether they accept bribes. Either way, they're going to say no. Being impartial is a foundation of journalism, but no person on earth is truly impartial. And just to be very clear, maybe that particular journalist that Gary was talking to, and maybe that particular organization is exactly like how it was described here, but overall, I would find it difficult to truly believe that that is the case with every single media organization, especially now that Elon, to some degree, is a political target. If Elon was not a political target, then I think it would be much easier to make this point, but right now, I don't think so. The way Gary asked these questions came more from, has this happened in the auto industry before, which is coming from a very non-political lens. But everything that we learn right now, you also have to view it through a political lens. So the question to ask here would be, has there ever been a time, or did we ever have any cases where someone who is politically motivated writes false stories about someone because it is politically beneficial to them? So if you look at it that way, this whole argument here, I think, starts to fall apart very quickly. With all of that being said, Gary, however, remains bullish on Tesla's stock. And YouTube says you should watch this video next, but if you haven't finished watching this Elon Musk interview, watch this one first. My name is Matt Posius. Like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.